The neighborhood had always been a quiet symphony of suburban life, manicured lawns, pastel-painted facades, and the predictable ebb and flow of minivans and bicycles. It was a place where the most pressing concern was whether the recycling would be picked up on time. That was until Karen moved in, and the HOA meetings began to feel like a scene out of an overdramatic soap opera. Karen, with her perfectly coiffed hair and a smile as sharp as a paper cut, had an uncanny way of turning the mundane into the monumental. At first, it was small things. A harsh word about the length of the grass on my lawn, a pointed finger at the color of the flowers that lined my driveway. She had opinions, and they came wrapped in the guise of neighborhood improvement suggestions. But it was never about the grass or the flowers. It was about control. Her control. Her presence was like a gnat at a summer picnic, irksome, persistent. Her voice carried over fences, weaving through the picket serenity with the skill of an artisan. She was a maestro of the passive-aggressive symphony, setting the tempo with each disapproving glance. I watched, bemused, as she slowly tried to orchestrate her reign over the cul-de-sac. Her latest conquest was an unceremonious declaration that our driveways were a communal asset, a shared resource for the greater good of the neighborhood, or, more aptly, for the greater good of Karen's ever-expanding fleet of visitors. Her first move was my garage. I came home one evening to find her car parked snugly inside, like a cat that had wandered into a sunbeam. It was audacious, even for her. My initial reaction was to laugh. The absurdity of it was too delicious to immediately confront. But as I stood there, absorbing the scene like a still life painting, I realized this was more than just another of Karen's maneuvers. It was a challenge, a line in the sand. I could have confronted her right then. A firm knock on her door, a few choice words spoken beneath the twilight, but that would have been too easy, too expected. No, Karen needed a lesson in boundaries, in the art of subtlety. My mind buzzed with possibilities, each more satisfying than the last. Instead, I let her have it. The garage was hers, at least for the time being. I watched her face, framed by the glow of porch lights, as she pranced in the satisfaction of a battle won. Little did she know, the war was just beginning. Days blended into each other. Her car remained, a defiant monument to her temporary victory. It was almost endearing how she strutted around the neighborhood, basking in triumph. I, meanwhile, was the picture of composure, the calm eye in her manufactured storm. I began to plan my getaway, an escape that would leave her own actions echoing back at her. Visions of her confusion amused me, a gentle balm against the minor inconvenience. My intention was not to retaliate with malice, rather, to remind her of the boundaries she so easily discarded. The neighborhood continued its quiet hum, blissfully unaware of the brewing undercurrent. I observed, a passive participant in her game, knowing full well who held the true power. Karen's car sat in my garage like an uninvited ghost, occupying space it didn't belong. As I drove away, a delicate quiet settled over the neighborhood, the kind that arrives just before a storm. I knew Karen well enough to anticipate her reaction. A tempest brewing in sensible shoes and an aggressively floral blouse. But I had my suitcase, a full tank of gas, and time to let her unravel. The HOA notice appeared 3 days into my impromptu getaway, a flimsy piece of paper adorned with hollow threats and clipped formalities, violations. It claimed abandonment of property and unauthorized storage. The absurdity was as laughable as it was predictable, a cacophony of bureaucratic nonsense. Karen, of course, had orchestrated this latest assault with a flair only she possessed, a flair that turned the mundane into a crucible of chronic irritation. The HOA, her willing accomplice, penned citations with the fervor of a novelist crafting a thriller. Their ink, a weapon wielded against my absence, each fine detailed, each dollar sign a testament to Karen's obsessive need for dominance. And yet, it was the gossip that spread like wildfire, a peculiar blend of truth, half-truth, and fantasy. Karen, the self-anointed queen of whispered tales, spun a narrative that I had absconded, abandoning my home and responsibilities. Her tales grew with each retelling, like a snowball gaining momentum, hurtling towards a conclusion only she could envision. I imagined the neighbors, faces alight with interest, hanging on her every word, their nods and murmurs a chorus of tacit agreement, or perhaps thinly veiled amusement. They knew Karen as well as I did, the queen bee of conformity, ruling her paper kingdom with a plastic scepter. Perhaps they pitied me, the absent antagonist in Karen's melodrama, or perhaps they were amused, watching her flounder in a predicament of her own making. It was a dance of social chess, each move calculated, each consequence deliberate. From afar, I watched the spectacle unfold, detached yet intimately connected, my absence an unexpected twist in her narrative, a plot point she couldn't control, a gentle reminder that chaos, once unleashed, is an untamable beast. The irony, of course, lay in the simplicity of my plan. I had done nothing but leave, turn the situation on its head, and let Karen's proclivities take center stage. The more she schemed, the more she incriminated herself in the court of public opinion. And all I had to do was nothing. It was delightfully poetic. The days stretched on, a tapestry of serene landscapes and quiet moments. My thoughts drifted back to the neighborhood, to the scene I had left behind, a small world caught in the throes of incongruity, its harmony disrupted by Karen's ceaseless machinations. The denouement awaited, the resolution inevitable. Tension hung in the air like a note unsung. I reveled in the anticipation, the knowledge that my return would tip the scales, shift the balance. But for now, I lingered in the silence, savoring the unfolding story, an inscrutable spectator in a grand, unplanned drama. Karen thought she had won, but she had forgotten the most crucial rule of all: never wage war in someone else's territory, especially when you've parked in their garage and left the door wide open. That morning, the fog hung low, curling around the houses in our neatly organized cul-de-sac like a protective veil. It softened the edges of the world, blurring the boundaries that Karen was so fond of pushing. The driveway, usually a pristine path leading to my refuge, now hosted her silver SUV, brazenly occupying my space, as if it had always belonged there. I stood at my kitchen window, sipping coffee, the steam mingling with the mist outside. Her vehicle was a metal beast, claiming its territory with arrogance. It seemed to sneer at me, a silent challenge in the early light. I felt the familiar churn of irritation tighten in my chest. But I pushed it down. A practiced motion. There was a satisfaction in knowing how this would end. I'd spent the last few days documenting every infraction. Her SUV was just the latest in a long list of trespasses, each recorded in meticulous detail. The HOA rules were explicit, and my cell phone was now a catalog of her defiance. Photos, timestamps, notes on her escalating sense of entitlement, each entry a small, sharp piece of evidence against her. The plan unfolded in my mind with the precision of a well-rehearsed ballet. It was all about timing, subtlety. I didn't need to confront her. That wasn't my style. Instead, the key was making her own arrogance work against her. I had the documentation, and now it was time to use it. Later, I visited the HOA office. The building stood inconspicuously amid the strip malls and manicured lawns. Inside, it smelled faintly of stale coffee and bureaucracy. I handed over the documents, each page a silent testament to her overreach. The clerk, an unassuming man with the tired eyes of someone used to petty disputes, accepted them with a slight nod. No words were exchanged. None were needed. The evidence spoke loudly enough. Back home, I prepared for my departure. Clothes were packed. House locked the routine of travel, a soothing distraction. I took one last look at Karen's SUV. still shameless in its intrusion. It would be a while before I returned from my trip, long enough for the wheels I'd set in motion to start turning. The first sign of consequence would be subtle. A letter from the HOA, maybe a fine. It would be followed by a meeting, perhaps even a suspension of privileges. Each step was just another cog in the machine of accountability I'd quietly put into play. I wasn't naive. I knew Karen would fight back. Her kind always did. Yet, in the quiet moments before leaving, I felt a serene confidence, like the fog. I had woven my plan through the cracks of her arrogance, wrapping it tightly. She would find herself ensnared before she even realized there was a trap. As I closed the garage door behind me, a sense of calm washed over me. The fog had begun to lift, revealing the day ahead, clear and unobstructed. In its retreat, it left the world sharper, more defined, and so too would Karen's understanding of boundaries sharpen, in time. The chill of early autumn had crept in overnight, painting the neighborhood with a gentle haze that softened the edges of rooftops and blurred the lines between the street and the sidewalk. Leaves, tinged with the fading colors of summer, whispered secrets as they skittered across the pavement. This was the backdrop to the quiet storm brewing in our little community, the kind that simmered just beneath the surface, waiting for a catalyst to bring it to a boil. Karen's audacity had been the spark. Her gleaming SUV, still parked brazenly in my garage, had become both a symbol and a spectacle. It stood there, a testament to her nerve and my peculiar brand of retaliation. I had left town, true, but I was never far from the pulse of our neighborhood. My absence was intentional, a deliberate silence that spoke louder than any confrontation. It was a strategic retreat, allowing the environment I had nurtured to do its work. The day after my departure, the neighborhood began to notice. First, it was the couple from 2 doors down, out for their morning jog. Their eyes lingered on the unfamiliar vehicle ensconced in its unexpected spot, their whispers floating back on the breeze as they passed. A puzzled glance shared between them was the first ripple in a pond that would soon surge with repercussions. By midday, the whispers had spread, carried on the wings of routine conversations and idle gossip. The elderly gentleman across the street, Mr. Hargrove, with his perpetual presence and keen eyes, was drawn into the fray. He had seen me leave, his gaze following the sweep of my own vehicle as it blended into the horizon. Now, as he tended to his meticulously curated garden, he watched the scene unfold with the analytical eye of someone who had seen too many seasons pass to be easily fooled by the superficial. By the time shadows stretched long across the asphalt, the news reached Karen herself. The irony, rich and heavy, was not lost on her. My absence was a question mark she couldn't erase, a silent challenge echoing off the walls of my garage. Her frustration simmered, palpable even from a distance. She had tethered herself to my space, assuming dominance, and in return, found herself bound by her own assumptions. Tensions rose with the setting sun. Neighbors gathered in small knots, their discussions punctuated by gestures towards the house, the garage, the now infamous SUV. What was once routine had become spectacle. My garage, the stage. Karen's car, the star. It was almost theatrical, the way curiosity fueled speculation, each new theory more elaborate than the last. I imagined Karen, her features pinched with annoyance, pacing the confines of her own home. She was trapped by her own narrative, a story of entitlement turned on its head. It was a slow unraveling, a peeling back of layers to reveal the raw nerve beneath. She had expected capitulation, a simple acquiescence to her will. Instead, she found herself ensnared in a tale she couldn't control, written by someone who understood the power of quiet defiance. And I, though miles away, felt the tremors of our unspoken battle. The air seemed to crackle with the unvoiced tension, a web of expectation and uncertainty. My absence was more than physical. It was an assertion of boundaries, a declaration that my space, my life, was not hers to commandeer at will. The neighborhood was alive with the energy of it all, a buzzing hive of speculation and judgment. As the sky deepened into twilight, the first stars glittered overhead, distant witnesses to the unfolding drama. In the quiet, I reveled in the knowledge that sometimes the greatest victories are those won in silence, with nothing more than the passing of time and the weight of one's convictions. The morning light filters through my window, casting a gentle glow across the room. There's a serene energy in the air, deceptive in its calmness. Much like the eye of a storm, it's the sort of morning that wraps the world in a warm hug, whispering promises of peace. But beneath this tranquil exterior lies the simmering chaos of human pettiness. The legal papers lie on the dining table, precise and unyielding in their authority. This is the quiet storm I've been brewing, meticulously crafted, waiting for the perfect moment to unleash its power. The audacity of Karen's actions lingers in the air, but I have become the architect of a quiet revolution, my own retribution. The sound of my footsteps echoes softly as I walk across the hardwood floors. Each step is deliberate, the weight of my decision pulling me forward. It's a dance of restraint, the delicate balance between fury and formality. Karen thought she could park in my garage like a conqueror, claiming new territory. A small inconvenience, one might think, but it was more. It was an intrusion, a violation of boundaries, an echo of entitlement. In the stillness of my living room, I reflect on our encounters, her condescending smile, the way she dismissed my polite protests as trivial nuisances. The audacity was almost admirable, in a way only the truly oblivious can be. She thrived in chaos, a maestro conducting an orchestra of grievances, and I was just another instrument in her symphony of absurdity. I pick up the legal documents, feeling the weight of justice in my hands. Filing for a restraining order wasn't my first thought. It was the inevitable conclusion of her relentless trespasses. Each page is a testament to the boundaries she shattered with cavalier disregard. I envision the courthouse a place where chaos meets calm in a dance as old as time. As I step outside, the chill in the autumn air wraps around me, grounding me in the present. The neighborhood, a tapestry of lives intertwined, continues to hum with the rhythm of everyday life. It's almost poetic, the normalcy that surrounds my quiet revolution. No one knows the storm that brews within these sheets of paper. Karen's house stands across the street, oblivious to the change that is about to sweep through her meticulously curated existence. The irony is rich, almost palpable. She, who wielded control with a flick of her wrist, now stands at the precipice of losing it all power, shifting with the inevitability of the tides. I imagine her reaction when she receives the court summons. The image amuses me, a small but satisfying victory in the ongoing saga of neighborhood warfare. Her fortress of arrogance is about to be breached, not with grand gestures or fiery confrontations, but with the quiet force of the law. In this moment, I am reminded of the power of patience, of silence, an art form lost in the cacophony of modern life. The world doesn't always need grand gestures to change. Sometimes, it's the quiet resolve of an individual standing firm that tips the scales. I walk back into my house, the door closing with a satisfying click. It's not the end of the saga, I know, but it's a beginning. A new chapter where boundaries are respected, where intrusions are met with the weight of consequence. The storm has passed, leaving in its wake a quiet determination, a newfound respect for the power of calm in a world that often forgets its worth. The air was heavy with anticipation as I stood in the shadows of my front porch, watching the last embers of evening fade into night. The neighborhood lay quiet, a lullaby of distant crickets and the occasional rustle of leaves carried by the cooling breeze. In the stillness, I could almost pretend the past weeks had been a fevered dream. Almost. Karen's SUV, her metallic beast, was still harboring itself in my garage, an uninvited guest that had long overstayed its welcome. The community knew it too. whispers of our silent war circling like vultures. The HOA meeting had been the crescendo board members, normally placid as a summer pond, had rippled with unease as Karen spun her version of events. Her voice, saccharine sweet, dripped with faux innocence, but her eyes betrayed the storm beneath. But tonight, the tide was turning. I had played my part, orchestrated the silent symphony of justice with meticulous care. The HOA president, a staunch believer in order and fairness, was my unexpected ally. His patience with Karen had thinned to a fragile thread, and now it was set to snap. Taking a deep breath, I let my eyes wander over the scene. The streetlights cast long shadows, painting the road in hues of gold and gray. It was a canvas of calm, the calm before the storm. I stepped down from the porch, my footsteps soundless on the dewy grass, and melted into the night, a specter in the sanctuary of suburbia. Inside my garage, the SUV loomed large, a titan in repose. I ran a hand along its sleek surface, feeling the cool metal against my skin. This was my rebellion, my quiet defiance etched in each fingerprint. I had left town, yes, but not without setting the stage. A clandestine call to an old college friend, a tow truck operator with a penchant for the dramatic, had been my final move. The rumble of an engine broke the serenity, a low growl building as the tow truck rounded the corner. Its headlights sliced through the darkness, illuminating the dormant SUV like a spotlight on an unwelcome guest. The truck halted, and my friend, ever the professional, nodded in silent acknowledgement. He set to work, his movements fluid and precise, as if conducting a symphony only he could hear. I watched, a silent observer, as the SUV was coaxed from its resting place. The metal creaked in protest before succumbing to its fate. The sight was oddly satisfying, a tangible manifestation of a balance restored. The truck, burdened yet triumphant, began its retreat. The SUV in tow, a fallen monarch dethroned. As the sound of the engine faded into the distance, I felt the tension within me unwind. A tightly coiled spring finally released. The neighborhood, once a battleground, resumed its slumber, unaware of the quiet victory that had unfolded within its bounds. The dawn would bring whispers, speculation, perhaps even a newfound peace. Karen, dethroned and deflated, would find her voice had lost its power. In time, her reign as the self-appointed queen of the HOA would become a distant memory, a cautionary tale whispered over backyard fences and morning coffees. But for now, the night embraced me with its tender darkness, a cocoon of tranquility in a world briefly unbalanced. I turned back to my house, the quiet protagonist of this tale, knowing that for once, justice had unfolded not with a roar, but with a whisper.